This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Gabe Pickett. I work at the Fellow Center for Advising and Career Planning in the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences, as well as the University Career Center as the Career Outreach Specialist. I want to welcome you all to the BSOS Career Chats. This session is a part of a larger series that welcomes students from all who are organized around BSOS popular career areas of interest. They are designed to give students the chance to connect with alumni in an informal format, get your questions answered, and gain valuable industry insights. Today, our BSOS Career Chats features Murrell, advisor for data science, at Fannie Mae. During today's sessions, there will be a moderated Q&A where students are more than welcome to submit questions in the chat or use the raise hand feature to ask them yourselves. Without further ado, you'll introduce himself, and then we will get started with questions.
Great, thanks, Gabe, and happy to be here. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. Also, just before I start, Gabe and I were chatting. I do hope that we can treat this as sort of conversational in nature. So feel free to interject if you have any questions. Just feel free to ask. So yeah, I am what is called an advisor of data science at Fannie Mae. I'm sort of a senior individual contributor / team lead. And I've been at Fannie Mae ever since I graduated from the University of Maryland in 2011. I did that with a degree in finance and economics. And so I've been at Fannie for almost 10 years now, or I guess, yeah, over 10 years now. Wow. Since then, I went back to Maryland, as you can see, for a master's degree in applied economics. I got that I finished that degree in 2017. So before I tell you a little bit about my role at Fannie Mae, let me describe Fannie Mae as a company. I'm not sure if any or many of you have heard of us. We operate in what is called the secondary mortgage market. So we basically buy loans from mortgage originators. So those are just really banks. So think of like Bank of America, Wells Fargo. And we take those loans and we package them into what are called mortgage-backed securities. And we sell them to institutional investors. So think like pension funds, hedge funds, insurance companies, retirement accounts, right? And so that's sort of the nature of our business. Now, why do we do this? We were set up in the 1930s as part of the New Deal. And the idea was to inject private capital into the mortgage system. So without companies like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, those originators, those mortgage lenders that I mentioned at the beginning, would not have the capital basically to loan out very many mortgages, right? The average home price in this country right now is around $400,000, right? And these lenders only have so much capital. Capital is just a fancy word for cash to lend out, and eventually they'd run out of capital to lend people for mortgages. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac basically were created to inject private capital into the system and to allow for more and cheaper mortgages, right? So that's why we exist. So I do something at Fannie Mae called servicing analytics. Fannie Mae doesn't actually interact with any of the borrowers that get the mortgages. We employ entities called servicers to do this. And in a lot of cases, those can be the same entities, the Wells Fargo, the Bank of Americas that actually lended the mortgage. They do what's called mortgage servicing. They have the autonomy to make a lot of decisions on our behalf, especially if a borrower gets into some type of trouble paying their mortgage. The servicer will interject and try to help the borrower. So it's my job to basically sort of make sure that those servicers are prudently making those decisions, and we leverage data to do that. And we also help the servicing policy team to kind of provide policy to the servicers for making these decisions. Any of the policy decisions that we make at Fannie Mae are going to be data driven. So I kind of support the policy team in that regard. And then finally, I'm also a co-lead for the Single Family Analytics Associate Program. where we hire, onboard, and train 20 to 30 data science associates each year. I'd love to kind of talk more about that program at the end here if we've got some time. But why don't we jump into some of these questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, we will hop right into the first question. Can you tell us about the most challenging or the most rewarding aspect of your position?
Okay, so let's start with rewarding. So I think one of the most rewarding aspects is what I just spoke about, which is being part of the associate training program here at Fannie Mae, where we onboard and train associates. And so it's not only really the training of associates, but the biggest part of my job right now is to kind of take newly minted associates from that program and then sort of lead them on initial projects. And I think the most rewarding part of this is to see them kind of grow and see how their data science skill, and not only data science skills, but data science skills, analytics skills, communication skills kind of evolve in their first 1 to 2 years on the job. And kind of taking, an associate that maybe produced something, initially had projects that they produced that were sort of rough around the edges, and seeing them really grow in their career and being able to produce something and then present it to a sort of more non-technical audience. That's kind of one of the most rewarding aspects of my position. Most challenging. I guess one of the most challenging things for my position is I just have a ton of meetings right now. And it's kind of like as you grow more in your career, you're kind of more involved in meetings. And that can be challenging just because some of what I enjoy most is just kind of putting my head down and figuring something out, coding up an analysis. And I don't get to do that as much anymore. The good news for anyone coming in as an associate at Fannie Mae, meetings are not going to be a big part of your job until you really kind of grow in your career. So I'd say that's the most challenging thing, is just sort of being involved in many meetings.
Great, thank you. We have actually a question that was submitted in the chat. Does Fannie Mae sponsor H-1B visas?
Unfortunately, we don't. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the next question if there's no other ones in the chat. Yep. Okay. What advice do you have for students seeking to gain experience in this field? Are there specific hiring strategies that would be helpful for students to be aware of?
Sure, this is a good question. So first and foremost, I would say spend time on your resume, right? That's going to be your foot in the door, right? That's the first thing we look at. And you could have done great work and have some awesome experience, but if it's not well framed in your resume, we have no way of knowing that, right? And we do resume filtering, right? So make sure your resume is crisp. You really kind of state everything you want to state in your resume. I believe, Gabe, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Career Center has templates for what resumes should and should not look like, right? I don't know how many times I've seen a resume where it just looks like the individual spent 10 minutes putting it together, right? And that's kind of, honestly, that's going to be a red flag right away. If you can't spend the initial amount of time kind of just putting a resume together, that's going to be sort of an issue. I would say another thing is, and this may be a specific pet peeve for me and maybe not for many other employers, but research the company prior. I know for Fannie Mae, we kind of operate in the background and a lot of people may not have heard of us, but that is abundantly clear when inevitably one of the first interview questions is, tell me what you know about Fannie Mae. So I always really like to see candidates that have researched the company. This is not terribly challenging, right? Spending 10 to 20 minutes before the interview just Googling and making sure you really understand what is the company that you're about to interview for and sort of what is the role you're interviewing for. And then finally, being able to speak coherently about one project in detail. So especially for quantitative roles like this one that we're hiring for, I really like it when a student can really dive deep and tell me in detail just about one project that they've worked on recently, right? And I see some students really do this very well, and I see some students that have trouble even remembering one project, right? And so before jumping into any interview, I would say make sure you think about a project that you have done and be able to really explain it in detail. So those are 3 tips that I think I have if for students starting the hiring process.
Those are very good. And yeah, we do offer the Feller Center as well as the University Career Center both offer templates and career resources for students who are looking to need help with the resume, cover letter, even interview practice, things like that. So I really appreciate you. The shout out there too.
Cool, yeah.
We did have another question in the chat. Actually, a 2-part question. What statistical tools or software are widely used in your day-to-day work? And do you use Stata often? So
these are good questions. I would say predominantly in my group right now, we are using R and Python the most, are the statistical tools we use the most. We did use SAS, and we still use some SAS, but we're trying to move away. We're trying to move more to the open source languages, right? So R and Python. We do not use Stata. I see that question about Stata. We do not use Stata. It's typically, from what I've seen, Stata is used more in academia and not as much in sort of the business world. We also use SQL for database querying, and then Tableau for data visualization.
Great, thank you.
Good question.
So we move on to the next question. How does your organization support diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Sure. So we support diversity, equity, and inclusion in sort of 2 ways. First of all, from an employee perspective, we have what's called employee resource groups, which are targeted at specific groups of people. So for example, we have a Live Openly ERG, which is meant for LGBT people, but as well, anyone can join any of these resource groups. We have minority-focused resource groups, religion-focused resource groups. We have one for veterans. We have one for disabilities. I noticed today, this was the first time I had seen this one, that we have a resource group dedicated to just young professionals, right? For people joining the company and don't, maybe want to interact with people that are new to the workforce like them. So we have a number of resource groups that really go to supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion amongst our employees. Secondly, like Fannie Mae's business model sort of revolves around diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? We are all about home ownership, and we're all about trying to promote home ownership amongst groups that traditionally maybe haven't had the opportunity, right? And so we do a lot of, especially sort of on what we call the front end of the business, which means as loans come in, we do a lot of fair lending analysis to make sure that we are targeting all what we call protected classes equally and promote diversity that way. I'm actually involved in something. I work more on sort of what's called the back end. So once a borrower has a mortgage, we work on ensuring that they're able to pay that mortgage. And if they're not, on offering them products to be able to get back on their feet and paying their mortgage. We're looking to add, or we've always had sort of a protected class lens on that, but we're looking to kind of dive a little bit deeper and ensure that those mortgage products are equitable and provide sort of the same level of support to all protected classes. We've done that to some extent. We're looking to use data analytics to build a sort of more robust view into that. So I would say both from a business model and from an employee perspective, we support diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Awesome. Thank you. That's really good to know. Doing a lot. Sounds like you guys are definitely doing a lot and being really involved in kind of supporting the employee holistically, which is really important.
For sure, for sure.
Next question. What are some of the current trends in your field or industry?
So I can talk about this sort of in two ways. I guess from a mortgage perspective, right? Because obviously, ultimately, we are a mortgage finance company. COVID, as it has to, I'm sure, every industry, has impacted our industry. We saw about 10%, close to 10% of our borrowers take up what's called mortgage forbearance, which meant that they were worried about or did miss mortgage payments. We have worked hard, my team especially, with analytics around this to get those borrowers back on their feet, back paying their mortgage, allowing them to miss a number of payments if their job was affected. Right. I think today we're down to under 100,000 borrowers. So hopefully we're kind of getting back to some level of normality. Right. Hopefully we're at the tail end of this pandemic. Knock on wood. So obviously that's an important trend in our industry. Inflation is kind of is affecting the industry as well. So what happens with inflation, as the economics majors know, is that interest rates typically will go up. As we've seen in the past few months, interest rates have gone up. What that does in the mortgage market is it moves more from a refi market to a purchase market. So we see more borrowers coming in with purchase mortgages, which means they're buying homes with them rather than having mortgages just to refinance. So that's kind of some mortgage-centric themes. From a data science perspective, the big thing going on at the company right now is we're moving to the cloud, specifically AWS. We have a bunch of on-prem servers. We are trying to retire them. This is a very slow and arduous process, but we are excited to, remove that dependency to on-prem and be on the cloud, targeted by the end of next year. And as I mentioned before, we're also moving away from non-open source coding languages to open source coding languages, specifically R and Python. So those are some trends both in the mortgage industry and in from a data science perspective at Fannie Mae.
Great. Yeah, that's very insightful. Appreciate that. Last question that I have for you here. Are there opportunities currently available with your organization? And what specific qualities or skills are you looking for in candidates?
Yeah, so thanks for giving me the opportunity to sort of advertise that. Unfortunately, we are just wrapping up our spring hiring session right now. But every year, as I mentioned before, we hire 20 to 30 data science associates. We have a very robust 10-week training program where we teach them the skills like R and Python and Tableau and SQL that they will need to be a successful data science associate at Fannie Mae. That our next class will start in June. So as I said, we're just wrapping that up, but we also do a winter class. We will be back in the fall to begin recruitment for that class. So we'll be back at Murrell and maybe even in person in September to recruit for that position. At the same time, we'll also be recruiting for internship. We have a number of internship roles across the company, including in my organization, Single Family Analytics, but also outside of that with a variety of roles from data science in my org to software engineering, marketing. We've got a number of roles, of internship roles available. We are also, I think, just wrapped up the hiring for those roles in the summer, but we'll be back in the fall for the following summer. In terms of qualities or skills, so for what I'm looking for in the single family analytics world, we're really just looking for quantitative, logical thinkers, right? We're not looking for anyone in any specific major. We've hired econ, finance, computer science, stats, math, right? We've hired from a number of different organizations. We're not necessarily even looking for any coding or data science background, right? Although that obviously helps. We are looking for sort of quantitative thinkers and problem solvers. And we actually, in our interviewing process, we do sort of a test of that. We have a couple case questions that we ask candidates to take to sort of test quantitative thinking aptitude.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and you guys have traditionally been pretty active and engaged with recruiting UMD students. So I definitely want to say thank you and we're very appreciative of that. And we'll definitely keep an eye out for you guys this fall for some of the openings.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to coming back. You know, we used to go to the career fairs. I'll be honest, the virtual career fairs are not. I think the career fair is much better in person, and I'm very much looking forward to coming back. Hopefully in the fall, maybe we'll be back to the in-person career fair.
This fall we'll definitely have kind of the hybrid where we'll have the in-person and the virtual offerings for the flexibility. But we definitely look forward to hoping having.
Oh, great! Well, we will probably be at both.
You definitely Fannie Mae there as well. I do want to leave the last couple minutes for any student questions from anyone in the audience. Feel free to either put them into the chat or use the raise hand function. It's definitely a great opportunity to connect and get your questions answered. I know we had some questions prepared, but I'm sure you guys had some things that you were wondering yourself when you ventured into this session. So please feel free to ask.
No questions? These ones in the chat were great questions. Anything else along those lines?
Sorry, I just had a siren passing by. All right, well, I do want to bring your guys' attention to a few other events that we do have coming up. And I also want to thank you guys so much for attending today's session. If you guys do have the availability, we do have an Econ Last Chance pop-up shop that will happen on Tuesday, March 8th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. This is a great event for anyone who's looking to get either a job or internships this upcoming summer. We have a number of employers who will be posting in some of their open opportunities. We also have Deloitte Consulting with a women panel on Tuesday, March 17th from 3 to 7:30 p.m., as well as the Spring 2022 Federal Reserve Board information session, on Wednesday, March 23rd from 3 to 5. All these events can be found on the Feller Center events page. You can RSVP there or in Careers for Terps. I do want to thank you guys again for attending today's session. I want to give a big thank you to Murrell for joining us today and for imparting some of your wisdom and some really great and valuable career insights.
Thank you, Gabe. Happy to be here, and thanks to you for organizing.
Absolutely. Thank you guys again. Have a great rest of your day and be safe.
Take care, everyone.